My father disowned me right before my mom's birthday. I thought I'd lost everything, until my sister's boyfriend looked me dead in the eye and said, "She's my boss." That's when everything changed. Stick with me while I share my story. And if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Rhea Coleman. I'm 28 years old, and I live in a small town in Oregon. Life here used to feel simple. Family dinners, my mom's laughter, my dad fixing things in the garage, and my little sister Ivy always being the favorite. I loved them, even when it was clear I'd always be second best. Things changed a year ago. My grandmother passed away, leaving behind a small inheritance. It wasn't much, but it meant something, her last gift to us. Somehow, the money went missing, and Ivy told my dad that I took it. I didn't. I worked hard for everything I had, and I would never steal. But Dad didn't believe me. He said I'd shamed the family, that I was jealous of Ivy. I still remember his voice when he told me to get out of his house. That day, I lost not just a family, but a part of myself. My mom, Margaret, tried to stay in touch, but she was scared to go against him. So I focused on work. I became a project manager at a construction company, leading big projects and earning respect I never got at home. My co-workers became my family. I told myself that was enough. Then Mom's birthday came around. She wanted all of us together again. I didn't want to go, but her voice on the phone cracked when she said, "Please, Rhea, just one night." I agreed. I thought maybe time had softened Dad's heart. When I arrived, the air was tense. Dad barely looked at me. Ivy smiled that same fake, perfect smile. And then she walked in with her new boyfriend, a tall guy with a confident grin. His name was Liam. They looked like the perfect couple. I tried to stay quiet, just sitting at the end of the table, pretending everything was fine. But then, when Ivy introduced him properly, his eyes landed on me. His expression changed completely. Shock, confusion, maybe even fear. He took a step back and said, "She's my boss." The whole room froze. Ivy's smile disappeared. Dad looked between us, and Mom's eyes went wide. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, my heart pounding, watching everything I'd lost suddenly shift in an instant. That night, I realized life has strange ways of bringing truth to light. I didn't know yet what was coming, but I could feel something breaking. The lies, the masks, the control Ivy had over everyone. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready. Rhea had spent weeks planning her mom's birthday dinner. She wanted it to be something special, warm, simple, and full of love. She booked a small restaurant near the lake, one her mom always loved, with fairy lights, soft music, and her mom's favorite lemon pie. For Rhea, it wasn't just a birthday. It was a chance to fix what was broken. Maybe she thought if the night went right, her family could start over. She arrived early, making sure every detail was perfect. The flowers on the table were white lilies, her mom's favorite. She wanted Margaret to feel celebrated and loved, even if things between them had been distant. Rhea's heart was nervous but hopeful. For the first time in a long while, she felt like maybe forgiveness was possible. Her mom came in smiling, surprised by the decorations and the effort. For a few minutes, it felt like old times. They laughed softly, talked about work, and shared small stories. Rhea could see the light back in her mom's eyes. But that peace didn't last long. The door opened, and Ivy walked in, arm in arm with a tall, confident man. Rhea froze for a second. She hadn't expected her sister to come, let alone bring someone new. Ivy's voice filled the room, bright and attention-grabbing, as she introduced him, Liam Hart. He had that polished look, a smile that seemed too perfect to be real. His charm was obvious, but something about his eyes told Rhea he was used to getting what he wanted. Margaret looked delighted to see both her daughters together, but Rhea could sense the tension building. Ivy's presence always had that effect, beautiful on the surface but full of something sharp underneath. She leaned close to Rhea and whispered, "Didn't think you'd still show your face here." Rhea didn't respond. She just smiled lightly and looked away. Then their father, Thomas, walked in. His face carried that same cold expression that Rhea had come to know too well. He greeted Ivy warmly and ignored Rhea completely. She tried to speak, offering a calm "Hi, Dad," but he cut her off with a hard stare. "You shouldn't be here, Rhea," he said quietly but firmly. "You're not part of this family anymore." The words hit her like a blade, but she didn't let it show. Her throat tightened, yet she smiled softly, pretending the comment didn't sting. Her mom's eyes filled with tears, but she stayed silent, caught between her husband and her daughter. Rhea gathered her coat, turned to her mom, and whispered, "Happy birthday, Mom. You deserve the best night." She left before anyone could see the pain behind her calm smile. Outside, the night air was cold, and she stood still for a moment, watching the lights from the restaurant fade behind. Her heart was broken again, but something inside her shifted, quiet, steady, and certain. She wouldn't beg for love anymore. The next time they saw her, they'd understand exactly who she had become. It had been a year since everything fell apart. The memory still played in Ria's mind like a wound that refused to close. It happened on a quiet Sunday, right after the family gathered to divide their late grandmother's inheritance. It wasn't about the money, it was about trust, about the last piece of love their grandmother had left behind. Ria remembered how proud her grandmother had been of her, how she'd whispered, "You'll take care of them one day." Those words had meant everything. When the money went missing, confusion turned to chaos. Ivy cried first, claiming she had seen Ria near the desk where the envelope had been kept. Her voice shook, her tears convincing. Thomas didn't hesitate. He looked at Ria like she was a stranger. "How could you?" he had said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room fell silent, faces turned away, and Ria stood frozen, unable to defend herself. She tried to explain that she hadn't touched it, but no one wanted to listen. Thomas's disappointment felt heavier than any punishment. He didn't just accuse her, he humiliated her. In front of their relatives, he said she was selfish, that she'd always been jealous of Ivy. Ria could still hear the laughter of guests turning into whispers. The shame burned into her skin. That night, she packed her things and walked out, her heart breaking but her pride still intact. Her mother, Margaret, found her later, sitting in her car by the side of the road. She didn't say much, just held Ria's hand and cried. "I don't know what to believe," she whispered, torn between the truth and the family she wanted to keep together. Ria didn't blame her. Margaret had always lived in the middle, trying to keep peace between two sides that refused to meet. But after that night, even Margaret's comfort couldn't erase the emptiness Ria felt. Weeks passed and no one called. Ivy went on as if nothing had happened, walking around town with that same practiced innocence. Thomas pretended Ria never existed. Margaret sent a few quiet texts, short messages about weather or food, never daring to talk about what had happened. Ria answered every one, just so her mother would know she was still there. She threw herself into work, spending long nights drafting plans and managing teams, trying to drown the ache of being unwanted. When the sadness crept in, she told herself she didn't need anyone to believe in her. She'd build her own life, even if it meant starting from nothing. She found a small apartment near the hills, far from the house where her father's voice still echoed in memory. Every morning she'd look at herself in the mirror and whisper, "You don't owe them your pain." It became her silent promise. She didn't know when or how, but she swore that one day, she'd stand strong enough that no one could ever make her feel small again. Ria's days started before sunrise and ended long after dark. The steady rhythm of her work became her anchor. At the construction firm, she found a strange kind of peace in structure and progress. Numbers made sense, people didn't. She began as an assistant on small renovation projects, quiet but observant, learning how every detail mattered. Over time, she proved herself through consistency, never cutting corners, never chasing credit. When problems came up, she stayed calm, finding solutions while others panicked. Her dedication didn't go unnoticed. Clients began requesting her by name, impressed by her honesty and patience. The owner of the firm promoted her to manage larger projects, and soon she was overseeing high-value contracts that shaped the town's skyline. For the first time, Ria felt grounded, not because someone gave her approval, but because she had earned it. People trusted her word. Her team followed her lead. Even those who doubted her learned that when Ria spoke, she meant every syllable. Outside of work, her life remained quiet. She kept her circle small, her heart guarded. She wasn't bitter, just careful. The scars from her family's betrayal ran deep, but they taught her strength. Every successful blueprint, every completed building was another brick in the wall she built between her past and her present. One morning, the firm welcomed new recruits. The HR manager introduced several names, none of which stood out to Ria, at least not at first. Among them was a man named Liam Hart, recently transferred from another branch. He was assigned to a junior position under one of her project team. Ria barely noticed him then. She had deadlines to meet and contracts to finalize. Still, there was something about his name that felt faintly familiar, though she couldn't place it. Weeks passed and Liam's reputation grew. He was ambitious, skilled with design software, and quick to adapt. He often watched Ria from a respectful distance, listening when she explained plans or mediated disputes. There was something in his expression, an unspoken curiosity, maybe admiration, but Ria didn't dwell on it. She had no time for distractions. The company was preparing for one of its biggest developments yet, a lakeside project that would define her career. Ria poured every ounce of focus into it. Late nights in the office became routine. Blueprints scattered across her desk were the only chaos she allowed in her life. But fate was quietly setting the stage. Their paths, once separate, were inching toward collision. Liam's new position placed him directly beneath her supervision, though neither realized how closely their lives were already linked. Somewhere beyond the walls of her well-built world, a thread was tightening, one that would soon pull her back into the story she thought she had escaped. For now, Ria simply worked, unaware that the man who would change everything had already stepped into her world, carrying with him a connection to the past she thought she'd left behind. Rhea didn't want to go. The thought of another family gathering made her stomach twist, but her mother's gentle voice over the phone left her with no choice. "Please, honey," Margaret had said softly. "Just one dinner to talk about the plans for my birthday. That's all I ask." Rhea agreed, not for herself but for the woman who had always tried to hold their family together, even as it kept falling apart. She spent the drive rehearsing small talk, trying to convince herself to stay calm no matter what happened. By the time she reached the restaurant, her hands were trembling on the steering wheel. She took a deep breath, straightened her blazer, and walked in, determined to keep her composure. Margaret was already there, sitting at the head of the table, smiling nervously. Thomas sat beside her, stiff and unreadable, his expression as cold as ever. Rhea nodded politely, taking the empty seat at the far end. For a brief moment, she thought maybe things would stay civil. Then Ivy arrived, her laughter cutting through the room like glass. She entered with confidence, her arm linked with a man's. His face was familiar, too familiar, but Rhea couldn't quite place it until Ivy announced proudly, "Everyone, this is my boyfriend, Liam Hart." The name hit like a jolt. Rhea's heart stopped for half a beat. Liam, the new recruit, the man who worked under her team. Before she could react, Liam's gaze lifted and met her. His easy smile vanished. His jaw tightened, his eyes widened, and the color drained from his face. He froze where he stood, blinking in disbelief. She's my boss," he stammered, the words falling into the silence like thunder. No one moved. The air in the room thickened. Ivy turned sharply toward him, her confident posture crumbling as confusion flickered across her face. "What did you just say?" she asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. Liam didn't answer. His eyes stayed locked on Rhea, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Thomas's expression darkened instantly. His hand clenched on the table, his stare hard and accusing. Margaret looked from one to the other, her lips parted but no words coming out. The tension was unbearable. Rhea, sitting perfectly still, forced herself to breathe evenly. She refused to show the chaos swirling inside her. Finally, she managed a polite nod, her tone calm but distant. "Mr. Hart works with my team," she said quietly, her words measured. "I wasn't aware he was family." It was the only thing she could think to say, though every heartbeat echoed loud in her ears. Ivy tried to laugh it off, but her voice trembled. "Well, what a small world, right?" she said weakly. No one responded. The awkward silence stretched, heavy and strange, wrapping around them like a secret none of them wanted to face. Rhea sat back in her chair, her expression unreadable. She didn't know how fate had crossed their paths again, but one thing was certain. The calm she had built was gone, and something far more complicated had just begun. After that dinner, the air between them was different. At work, Rhea didn't mention the awkward encounter. She carried herself with the same calm focus as always, her tone even, her instructions clear. Yet everyone could sense the tension that lingered beneath the surface. Liam avoided her for the first few days, unsure how to act around his superior, who was now tied to his personal life in the most uncomfortable way. Rhea never let it show that she cared. She reviewed reports, walked through construction sites, and handled meetings with the same firm composure. Her authority was quiet but undeniable. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Even those who challenged her eventually fell in line because there was something steady in her presence, something that made people listen. That same calmness began to unnerve Liam. He couldn't stop thinking about how different she was from the version Ivy had described to him. At home, Ivy's tone was sharp and impatient. She complained constantly about Rhea, twisting every story to make herself the victim. "You can't just let her talk to you like that," she would snap, pacing the room. "You work under her. You can find a way to make her life harder." Liam would stay quiet, pretending to agree, but his thoughts were tangled. He had seen Rhea at work, steady, fair, respected. She treated everyone the same, no matter who they were. The image Ivy had painted of her sister didn't match reality. Days turned into weeks, and Ivy's demands grew louder. She wanted him to sabotage Rhea's reputation, make small mistakes, start rumors, anything to tarnish her. But Liam couldn't do it. The more he watched Rhea handle pressure with grace, the more he doubted everything Ivy had told him. He started seeing the cracks in Ivy's charm, the way her kindness disappeared whenever things didn't go her way. One evening, after a long day at the site, Liam stayed behind to finish paperwork. Rhea was still in her office, reviewing project updates. He knocked softly, unsure why he'd come. "You've been quiet lately," she said without looking up. Her tone wasn't cold, just measured. He hesitated before answering. "There's something you should know," he said finally. "About Ivy." She looked up then, her expression unreadable. He confessed how Ivy had pushed him to undermine her, how she spoke of her sister with bitterness and lies. He told her about the manipulation, the guilt, the way he was starting to see the truth. Rhea listened without interrupting. When he finished, she only nodded. "Thank you for being honest," she said softly. "But don't choose sides for me. Just choose what's right." After he left, she sat alone, the city lights flickering through the window. Revenge could have been easy. She could have exposed Ivy right then. But she didn't want that. What she wanted was clarity, the truth laid bare, not out of anger but out of justice. Quietly, she promised herself that when the time came, she wouldn't destroy Ivy. She would simply let her own actions reveal who she truly was. Liam showed up at Ria's office one late afternoon, carrying a folder clutched tightly in his hand. His expression was serious, almost haunted. Ria could tell something had shifted, but she stayed silent, waiting for him to speak. He placed the folder on her desk, his voice low and uneasy. "You need to see this," he said. Inside were copies of old bank statements, letters, and screenshots of messages. Ria's breath caught as she scanned through them. Her grandmother's account, the inheritance transfer, everything that had caused her downfall, was there in black and white. The signatures didn't match. Liam had traced them back to Ivy's old email, and even found the forged authorization form she had used to move the fund. The evidence was undeniable. "She did it," Liam said quietly. "She took the money and made it look like you did." His hands trembled as he spoke, guilt flickering across his face. "I didn't believe her at first, but when I found these files on her old laptop, I knew I had to tell you. She's been lying to everyone, including me." Ria sat back in her chair, stunned. The truth was finally right in front of her, the proof she had needed for so long. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt heavy, almost painful. For years, she had been branded the villain of her own family. Now that she could finally clear her name, part of her hesitated. Ivy was still her sister, no matter what she had done. "She must have been desperate," Ria murmured, more to herself than to him. Liam shook his head. "It wasn't desperation, Ria. It was control. She wanted to be the one your father trusted, no matter the cost." His tone was full of regret. "She used both of us." The words sank deep. Ria wanted to be angry, but instead she felt tired of the lies, the distance, the years lost to pride. "I don't want revenge," she said after a long silence. "I just want the truth to come out." Liam nodded. "Then let me help you. People need to see who she really is." Neither of them noticed Margaret standing just outside the doorway. She had come to drop off lunch for her daughter, but the sound of their voices stopped her. She stood frozen, her heart pounding as she listened. She heard Ivy's name, the mention of fake documents, and Ria's quiet refusal to seek revenge. A cold realization began to wash over her. Pieces she had ignored for so long started to fit together. Thomas's anger, Ivy's stories, Ria's sadness. When Ria looked up and saw her mother in the doorway, she froze. Their eyes met, and Margaret's face told her she had heard everything. She stepped inside slowly, tears already forming. "All this time," she whispered, voice breaking, "you've been telling the truth." Ria couldn't speak. She just nodded, the weight of years of silence finally starting to lift. The truth, long buried, was no longer hiding. It had found its way to the surface, and nothing would ever be the same again. The evening of Margaret's birthday arrived, and the whole house was glowing with soft lights and laughter that sounded too forced to be real. Ria had come because her mother asked her to, not because she wanted to. She stayed quiet, watching everyone move around the dining table. Ivy looked flawless as usual, smiling for attention, pretending nothing in the world could touch her. Thomas sat at the head of the table, his expression stern, his eyes passing over Ria as though she were invisible. Dinner began with polite conversation, mostly led by Ivy. She spoke about her work, her plans with Liam, and her new friends in the city. Every word felt like a performance. Ria sat beside her mother, keeping her composure. She could feel Margaret's hand occasionally brush against hers, a small gesture of comfort that didn't go unnoticed. After dessert, Thomas stood up to make a speech. He cleared his throat, holding a glass of wine in his hand. "Family is built on loyalty and trust. When those are broken, the family falls apart. I've always believed in standing by the ones who prove their honesty." His words hung heavy, a thinly veiled message aimed directly at Ria. The room grew quiet, the only sound the faint clinking of silverware. Before he could continue, Margaret rose from her chair. Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes were steady. "Thomas, before you finish, there's something I need to say." Everyone turned to look at her. She held a small envelope, the same one Ria had given her earlier that day, the folder with Liam's evidence inside. "You've been speaking about loyalty," she said softly, "but maybe it's time we look at the truth." She handed the papers to Thomas. His brows furrowed as he read through the documents, confusion turning into disbelief. The bank records, the forged signatures, the proof of who had really taken the money. It was all there. "What is this?" he demanded, looking up at Margaret. Ria didn't speak. She just watched as Ivy's face drained of color. "Those are the records," Margaret said firmly. "The ones that show what really happened after Mother passed away." Ivy's voice cracked as she tried to recover. "Mom, you can't believe this. She's lying again. She's trying to make me look bad." Her words tumbled out quickly, panic replacing confidence. Before anyone could respond, Liam stood. His expression was steady, but filled with regret. "No, she's not lying," he said quietly. "I found the files myself. Ivy used my computer to hide them. I should have come forward sooner." The room fell silent again. Thomas stared at his younger daughter, disbelief written across his face. "Tell me this isn't true," he said, his voice breaking. But Ivy had no answer. Her hands trembled, her eyes darting toward the door as if she could escape the moment. Margaret turned toward Rhea, her eyes soft but full of sadness. "I'm sorry it took me this long," she whispered. And for the first time in years, Rhea saw the truth win, not through anger but through courage.